This week on Great Chat, ASMR edition, where is the best place to build? Is San Francisco still the front runner? Or does LA have a shot? A quick reminder, each week we answer your questions. Don't forget to submit them at anothergreatchat.com. I'm Mackenzie, and we are joined by Sally, Angela, Helen, and Ashley this week. Whole gang's here. Oh wow, this is like really zoomed in on my face. I would like to do like 90% less Mackenzie's face. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I feel a little too zoomed also.
You are fantastic. I appreciate it. Did you know that my cat's named the Federal Reserve? Is that a thing that people know?
Yeah.
I actually think he's just going to speak for me today. How do we feel about that, girl?
I'm just going to say for the audio listeners, we have a cat as our fourth host today.
Honestly, adds a lot more value. I'm really leaning into my cat lady era, and I'm obsessed with him. He's the greatest thing ever. I kind of wish I had like a dog though, because I really want to do a little bit more. Like, I just want an excuse to be outside, and the indoor cat doesn't really get that for you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's not helping me stick to my goals, wanting to constantly snuggle with my perfect little fluffy.
You can rent my Marlbone anytime you want.
Yeah, Tawny is available to fly cross country for beach walks. So just let me know.
I appreciate that. Sounds very carbon conscious.
Can I share my side hustle business idea on this
Please.
thing? Because you know how all these companies bought parking lots to turn them into ghost kitchens? I want to buy parking lots and turn them into dog parks. Like, can you imagine in a city, you can like make it really nice, have like a hipster like barista there, like that.
Yes,
like
Ashley and I were talking about this. The
this is
Soho Grand has some ridiculous membership-only dog park.
what? Someone's copied my
That's
idea.
in LA.
It's too small. It's too small for real dogs. It's like this tiny little courtyard. Angela, I also have this idea, and I have a name for it. It's called Playhound, like playground.
God, that's
And
amazing.
I think it would be huge. Also, I think there could be like lanes for dogs that just want to play fetch or want to play in smaller groups, because city dog parks are kind of insane. And especially if you have a puppy, or like, let's say you just rescued a dog, you can't just like let them loose in that insanity. And so I think like we could go into business together on this. This could be like the first like company under Great Chat Enterprises.
100%.
Have I ever told you guys about my fake hedge fund idea?
No.
Oh, it's actually not a fake hedge fund idea. It's a fake VC idea. So my friend Sophia and I have this very silly plan to create a venture firm, and the premise of it is you get equity in exchange for setting the founders up with an SO.
Wow.
And we're gonna call it Edge Fund.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I feel like you could do something with the word partners, right? Because it's all like,
Partners Capital was already taken.
No. Okay, I'm gonna
Not investment advice. Not investment advice.
Not investment advice. Not legal advice. Not investment advice. Not financial advice. Really attentive people might notice that Helen is not here, and it's because we hate her. So
she's been voted off the pod.
She got voted off the pod. I hate her. We're not friends anymore. She's dead to me. Just generally, just like wasn't super in love with her personality. So.
Or she's stuck in traffic. It's one of the two.
No, she's stuck in traffic.
That would have been the perfect moment for her to join, but we'll have that later. Guys, my life has changed since our last recording.
Everything.
You may know that I'm kind of like a stealth longevity bro, and I finally got on the continuous glucose monitoring bandwagon, and I'm having like medical breakthroughs left and right with my good friend Dr. GPT. And I'm sharing my like lingo. Lingo is kind of the less sexy, less venture-backed version of Levels. Lingo screenshots with ChatGPT, and my Aura screenshots with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT already has all my blood tests and everything. And my big like mountain to climb in life is I am not a good sleeper. I like wake up in the middle of the night, and I think I may have solved this. And ChatGPT's recommendation, which I tried, was to have a bedtime snack. Because I'm like very insulin sensitive, which I guess is better than the reverse, but it means that I overcorrect if I spike. And then you get like a big cortisol rush when you have low blood sugar. And now if I just have a little bedtime snack, I sleep through the night. It's magical.
I mean, that goes against like everything we've ever been told about.
Right.
since it
Great.
I love Dr. GPT.
Oh my God, this should be you should start a cult and call it Midnight Munchies. Like you are the longevity bro that we need.
Man,
All
I
the
love
cool
working
girls
with
are doing
marketing
it.
girlies. Oh my God, you guys, you're brilliant. I love it. I'm just obsessed. You're perfect. Also, Ashley, what the fuck? Tell us about your midnight snacks. Which one have you had lately? Are you
Well,
eating the $18 strawberry?
it's yeah, no, that I should try. That might lead to the best sleep of my life. It's not very exciting. It's like raw almonds, which I weirdly love. Like they just taste so good and so healthy.
You have almonds, I have martinis at night, so that's where we differ.
All right, well, Sally, like you are hot and single, and I am boring and married. So this is how the world works.
Angela, save us, please. Can you tell us what you're
Angela,
watching?
what are you reading? Let's get some serious.
Sally's like, please,
content.
nothing about me being professionally hot right now.
Oh, I don't even know how to follow that other than to take us to everyone's favorite topic, which is what is happening in AI land.
No. No, I am so over AI. Oh my God, I'm so bored. It is so boring. What? Did somebody else raise money at some ridiculous valuation? No way. Crazy. Oh my God, billions of dollars. Wow. Like, okay. Great. I don't know. I
Perfect
mean, like,
TF, Mac. Perfect
Yes.
TF.
yeah, sure. Let's
Yes.
talk about AI. Jesus. fucking
Yes,
Christ.
yes. But Mac, I think you'll appreciate this. So today in AI land, we are looking at the two different sides of the barbell. So on one side, there was a Bloomberg article, I'm just pulling up to make sure I have the right numbers, that said that there were 29 billionaires created that were founders of AI companies worth a combined $71 billion. So that's a lot of value.
Paper billionaires, obviously.
Paper
You
billionaires.
don't have me yet, is all I'm
There's
saying.
secondaries. There's secondaries that are happening, but mostly paper billionaires, which we should think that means there's been a lot of value created in the system. But at the same time, McKinsey, I guess, side note, they're like biased because every AI company has been tweeting about how like McKinsey and the future of consulting companies are over in the age of AI. But like putting aside their like natural
I feel like
bias.
that's true regardless of whether or not AI exists. Like, aren't we just discovering that anyway, that's a different conversation.
It's a different conversation. So that's why I asked for a side note. But McKinsey came out with a big survey they did that said that actually most companies who've implemented Gen AI have seen zero impact to the bottom line, which kind of takes the air out of all of this hype a little bit. So those are the two sides of the barbell where you have no economic value being created in the companies where AI is being implemented, but a lot of value accruing to the people that have started these companies. And at some point, those two sides have to converge, which will be an interesting moment in time for the AI industry.
I know one of the other things we talked about was the XAI buying X, which by the way, it didn't even like cross my headline because I didn't even see the headline like make it to my screen.
Yeah, like I definitely saw it, but it was a tiny blip even on X itself, which is kind of crazy because like if you try to imagine this narrative 2 years ago where, you know, the richest man in the world is using one of his big companies to buy another company, he's pricing it. And I think he priced it so that like it was just a tiny bit more than what he paid for Twitter / now X, which is, you know, perfectly Elon.
Man's ego, no.
like sucking up all of the X data, all the social media conversations that are happening to train the model. And like I feel like people would have been scandalized and outraged, like, you know, just a couple years ago. And now like most people couldn't even bother to make a joke about it. Everyone just continued on with their lives. Maybe they already thought X and XAI were combined in some way, but it really is indicative of like what a high bar there is for noise that breaks through. And I think Elon especially has trained us to expect so much crazy behavior that like, yeah, of course this was going to happen.
I've like refused to say X. I still call it Twitter,
You know,
in both written and oral. And now I feel like it's harder. So I'm like personally upset about that. Ugh.
Mac outed you about being in traffic earlier.
Yeah. That's okay.
Well, we actually said we voted you off the pod, but
oh no!
well, look, you're resilient. You've come back. We're going to give you another shot.
Back for the spicy takes.
By the way, before we get to our big topic, which is about battling the cities, two other like headlines that like barely made a blip on the radar was, to me, the Runway ML video just came out, and like this is post like new DALL-E and Sora video and content coming out. Like I feel like if this came out a year ago, people would have been talking about it nonstop, generating content. And I feel like not a ton of people saw that one. And then the other one in terms of speed was OpenAI just raised and closed another round for $40 billion. And again, like that, I feel like headline just like flew by within like a few days.
I can see Mac's eyes like rolling into the back of her head.
I know.
Okay, hell yeah, battle of the cities, baby. Let's go. Okay, SF, New York, other cities, where do you start a company? Thoughts?
Wait, why is LA left out of that?
LA is not a real tech city. LA is an amazing city. We have so many amazing things here. LA is fantastic. LA is gorgeous. LA is full of creative people. LA has culture. LA has cars, if you like that kind of thing. I don't. Like LA has design. LA has there's so many things that are magical about LA has beautiful beaches, perfect weather. LA is a spectacular fucking city. Oh, LA has like manufacturing and like industry, and again, LA, incredible city. Obsessed with it. 11 out of 10. I'm obsessed. But like it's not a tech city. Like El Segundo maybe is like but it's also not a tech city in the way that SF is a tech city. I really love El Segundo actually, like, and it's not even really just one city, El Segundo. It's like the entire South Bay, which is funny.
Can you please explain to us the Gundo brothers, which I learned about yesterday?
The Gundo brothers should be like a new pod on the Tech Bro Podcast Network. That would be amazing. Yeah, I don't think it's a pod yet, but it should be one. You know, actually, I had a pitch too, and I'm pitching this to the Great Chat audience. If anyone out there is a producer and wants to do this with me, looking at you, Rachel, please respond to my emails. I've been really, really pushing to make the Real Gym Bros of El Segundo a TV show. I think it would be hilarious. I think it would be amazing. I think it would be informative. So here's the deal in LA. So you have Venice Beach, which is where most of your friends who moved to LA during the pandemic moved. They all live in Venice. It is
me.
What?
I moved to Venice during COVID.
Yeah, that fits.
Yeah.
I love that for you. What a great outcome. Amazing place. 11 out of 10. Love that. Yeah. I could see you at Delina on like a Saturday morning.
Yeah,
like that's the vibe.
I know.
Yeah. She was like, I like brunch and I like sun. Let's go.
This topic though, we want to talk about because it is a question that comes up a lot amongst a lot of our friends and a lot of our peers. And like when I first started our company, we actually were dual headquartered, quote unquote, between Paris and San Francisco. One, because two of our co-founders lived in Paris and grew up in Paris, went to school with some of the guys from Mistral. And obviously we all know about the talent there. But ultimately, everybody wants to move to San Francisco. So I'm making a case for San Francisco.
Sally, I hate to break it to you, but making a case for San Francisco is not a very contrarian stand.
All right, bring on the New York.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not even the right person to properly make the New York case because I spent the first decade of my career in San Francisco, and like I wouldn't do it any other way. I think if you're going to work in startups, if you're going to build a startup, you have to live in San Francisco at some point. Like it is amazing to be building a career and a company in a city that is like revolves around the tech ecosystem. It's like a huge part of the fun. I will say it's so dependent on what kind of company you're building. I think like the simplest rule is you probably want to build near your customers. And a lot of San Francisco-based companies are building technology for other technology companies. I mean, you think about the power of Y Combinator. It's not just the pure network or the access to the partners or, you know, the demo day. It's like a lot of those companies will become your first customers of your product. And so it's a very, like, if you want to be immersed in tech and like tech selling to tech, or if you're building a foundation model, like all of them are in San Francisco. But, you know, I look at our portfolio. So we're a New York-based firm, but all four of us partners had like started our career in the Bay Area. And so our network spanned both, and about like, I would say like 35-40% of our portfolio is San Francisco based, and then a slight majority in New York, and then scattered other US cities. And the ones that are based in New York are based in New York because like their customers are in New York. So we have one that's a DeFi company and they partner deeply with Wall Street. We have, companies building technology for healthcare. And so I just think like there's no one size fits all. The default is, of course, be in San Francisco because the energy there is so fun, and it's the highest concentration of technical talent and investors. But it's such an individual. There's like the lifestyle considerations. San Francisco is not for everyone. I can make a great case for living in New York, like Mac just made for LA.
It's so funny you say that. I feel like San Francisco kind of is for everyone. There's like, you can do anything here. Whereas New York, I feel like is probably the greatest city in the world, but I find that people find it's like overwhelming, if you didn't grow up in like a big city, right? Whereas in SF, like I feel like 30 minutes outside of SF, you can be somewhere pretty rural or.
Sure. I mean, I'm in Brooklyn. I did not grow up in a big city. Like I feel like Brooklyn is basically San Francisco in terms of pace of life, and depending on where you are, density. I think a lot of people don't want to only live in a tech bubble and like want access to people who, like you have friends here who are artists or writers or comedians or finance bros, if that's what you want. And San Francisco can be a little bit monolithic. For some people. Also, you cannot beat the subway. Like I'm obsessed. I commuted for 9 years when I lived in San Francisco to Palo Alto or Los Altos, like 3 hours a day of driving. I will never do that again. Here I can like hop on a train and be anywhere. So I think lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely have public trans envy, like for sure. I mean, so I feel like I think the answer is yes, unfortunately, which, I grew up in the Midwest. Like I would love to see tier 2, tier 3 cities become more of tech hubs. I don't think it needs to be concentrated in 1 or 2 areas in order for like tech to thrive. But I think that if I were a young person building, a company, or even just like wanting to be immersed in tech and startups and start my career there, like this is probably, like you said, the highest concentration. I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, like we have 2 universities here that are just churning out like really great, CS grads. And those folks are, like straight path to either starting a company or joining one of the big tech companies. And then Sand Hill Road, like you have a really high concentration of, the largest venture funds here. And, so many of them as well. And so it's like the city sort of runs on that, but it wasn't always the case. And I don't, not to date myself, but like when I moved here, it was not an industry town. Like I think very much was still recovering from the .com bust. So to sort of watch it over time, I mean, I think of like, if I lived in LA, I would probably figure out how to work in entertainment or entertainment adjacent. And if I lived in New York, like, gosh, you could pick anything because New York is so large that, it's really hard to say that it's a finance city. It's like, no, it's an everything city. But SF like is pretty small. And I think people forget that, that the Bay Area, like, population wise isn't so big. So it's it was easy for like tech to kind of take over and do its thing.
Yeah, I mean, like I lived in New York City for 12 years before I moved to San Francisco. I obviously would spend time in media before I moved into tech. And you look at a lot of my friends who I met in San Francisco, though. I've got a few that actually just moved their headquarters from San Francisco to New York. And I'm not making a case for New York, but I'm also saying like there are certain verticals, like Ashley, you said, that makes more sense to be in New York.
I feel like I could live in San Francisco or New York and do this job, and those are basically the only 2 cities I feel like I could live in as an investor. One is that I think there is some benefit to being, unless you are building like at the heart of AI innovation. San Francisco, when I go, it feels like everyone's in a shared fever dream. Like you have these like monster valuations and rounds every week and like new model releases, and it's crazy. And I think that's like a really fun thing to get caught up in. But I do almost feel like I can see things like a little bit more clearly and objectively from New York because I'm not as immersed in that, but I'm much more immersed in what are the real world applications of this technology. And so it feels a little bit more grounding. And then the second thing, and this is incredibly self-serving, but I think New York is far less hierarchical in terms of the like startup ecosystem than San Francisco, just because we're smaller and still emerging. And even the sexiest VC firms like USV and Thrive and Primary are like pretty small relative to their San Francisco based counterparts. And so like as an emerging manager, I love being in New York because it feels so welcoming and so collaborative. And I think in San Francisco, you would really have to earn your spot in the tech industry. I mean, I felt that way with the first decade of my career. Like you sort of have to prove that you belong. Whereas in New York, we're still in recruitment mode. And maybe that's changed. Maybe that's changed with San Francisco because, you know, the whole narrative is like, we're back. And please come back to San Francisco. It's good now. And so maybe the vibes have shifted, but yeah, I generally find New York is like a really fun and welcoming ecosystem for founders, for investors, for startup employees, because we are not the biggest show in town. And so there's maybe like a little bit more humility there.
It's funny you say vibes because like I don't know what San Francisco's vibe is. And I mean, very good chance that I'm just like aged out of it, but like
or you're swimming in it, you can't even see it.
Maybe that's what it is, right? Yeah, but like, you know, a couple of years ago over my son's spring break, we rented this beautiful house in Santa Monica and we, you know, stayed there for 8 days and we were like, okay, let's see if, you know, let's try out what life would be like if we moved to LA. And so I spent that week meeting with tons of startups and like, you know, tech companies, and all of the investors in LA. And it was lovely, but like, it just felt so different. And so I think like, it's funny you say vibes, because I felt like the vibes were good and everyone was so stylish and like all of the things that I usually talk to founders about in the Bay Area about like the importance of brand and like telling your story. LA just had it on lock. Like that is not something that I could ever be useful about. And I had this thought where it's like, could like technical founders in the Bay Area and like, you know, founders in LA sort of meet in the middle somewhere in like San Luis Obispo and like start a company together? Cause like I would fund that all day. And like, I don't know, it's just so funny how I think there are tech cities, you know, but they all have like a different personality. So maybe I'm like a little bit like, I don't know if there's like a ranking of tech cities, but they're just like the personalities are so different. I mean, one of the best things I heard about New York was that in SF, you know, maybe it speaks to like how crowded it is and how, you know, sort of zero sum mindset we have here, but also, you know, tech's prevalence. We get really excited about funding ideas that take something that's like 92% efficient and making it like 93% efficient. Whereas in New York, like it's real America. They have big industries there and they're more interested in solving problems that take something that's like 40% efficient and making it 60% efficient, if that makes sense. And so when I think about like the micro mobility phase and like how many productivity companies have come out of San Francisco where it's like, it's another spreadsheet in the cloud or it's another scooter company. You know, I'm sort of reminded by like, we have pretty good lives here. And, you know, these like incremental gains in efficiency probably don't make sense to the rest of the country oftentimes.
Oh, that's funny. I thought you were going to say the opposite, which is San Francisco takes huge swings at like unpredictable futures and New York is more, or like other
interesting.
You're more like,
I feel like defense tech probably or like the stuff that we're talking about with Gundo Brothers probably is more big swings. They're literally going to space.
I've had a few folks that are like thinking about starting companies and looking for a co-founder. And I'm like looking at my calendar even this week when I go back to San Francisco. There's a hacker event at AGI House. There's another event. There's an investor event. I posted that we're hosting an event with NEA in a few weeks. And I have founders across the board that are like pinging to like get invited to these events. And like, I think there's just a lot of opportunities for, you know, especially like non-technical co-founders to like go find technical co-founders here as they like think about their idea. Of course, like San Francisco and Bay Area is like not cheap. Of course, New York as well is very expensive. So like once you have the luxury to be here to spend some time to like think about your idea and like think about who you want to start it with, I think there's, you know, the density of technical talent, like you said, Ashley, is like unparalleled compared to anywhere else. And then, you know, I forget what the saying was like, if it was Sequoia or somebody else, that like they will only invest in founders when they can like ride their bike to the office. I feel like that sort of like thesis is coming back for some funds. But I do see also the benefits of it. Like, you know, I've crashed at many investor offices. I think some of you guys' offices I've crashed at before. And so like when you're early on and you have no office space and you don't want to pay for office space, you can just go to any of these VC offices and work from there, which is like such a luxury. And like then you get to like have a little bit more face time with investors. And I think that kind of beauty doesn't really exist anywhere else.
I was talking to my friend who is like deeply entrepreneurial, who lives in London, about this. And we were talking about, should she move back here to start something, or can she do it in London? And we were discussing essentially like what I think gets to the heart of why I think San Francisco is such a great place to start a company, and also why I think it's not the only place to start a company. San Francisco is amazing to start a company for all of the reasons that you guys have listed, right? Like there's the combo of the amazing talent pool and all of the infrastructure. But I think there's also just this thing that's really hard in other cities where the hump that you have to get over is really like getting people to understand startup culture in a way that is just default in San Francisco. Like everybody in San Francisco understands the concept of equity. Like people know what venture capital is. People understand vesting. People understand like people are willing to commit long hours for lower wages to have a chance at owning something really big. And when you're in other cities, you get that progressively less depending on its proximity to tech. So it's going to be easier in an Austin or a Seattle or even a Los Angeles than it will be in, let's say, like London. And you can see this changing in London, but or I don't know, Atlanta. But it's also possible to make amazing companies anywhere, because that's the sort of hump that you have to get over as a founder anyway. Like if you're going to go build a generational company, you have to be able to sell your idea and get people on board and win and win and win and win. So I don't think like starting a company in San Francisco is giving yourself at least one area where you can do it on easy mode relative to other cities. But I think like it's possible to build an amazing company anywhere. You see, if you look at like all of the unicorn companies right now, there's a huge amount in San Francisco, but they exist elsewhere too. Like you can win anywhere, but it's easier to win here.
Maybe like a good sum of that is like, what do you want to pick as your unfair advantage? Is it being like swimming in top technical talent? Is it being near your customers? And like for every business, that question is a little bit different. Let's go to our rapid fire. Sally, want to tee us up?
So this Q&A is brought to you by Mercury, the fintech used by over 200,000 startups to simplify their finances. First question, I've been a journalist for 12 years and looking to make a transition into tech comms. Any advice?
Okay, I have a few hot takes here, but I actually have to revisit them because I've gotten this question a lot, especially back in my comms career days. And I think generally the transition from journalist to comms person has been a lot harder than people anticipated. I mean, of course, there's all of the sort of internal context you have to get used to, but like two big things. One, it's a huge status drop, or at least it was in the prior era of journalism. Like we talked about hierarchy earlier, going from a journalist where founders are like pinging you to write about their companies and like VCs want to spend time with you to being on a PR team is going pretty far down the hierarchy totem pole. And I actually think that is tough it's hard to go in that direction career-wise. And I know a lot of journalists where that part of the transition was a little bit gutting. But I think it's different now, at least journalism in the tech context is not as high status as it used to be. And so weird silver lining is that piece might not matter as much. The other thing is I think a lot of journalists found it very unsatisfying from going from like writing stories to pitching stories, but actually increasingly the comms function is less about reliance on traditional media and more about like the quality of the narrative, the editorial, and then like how do you craft something that that people want to read, whether they're different channels you can take it, like you can bring it to. We're in this sort of go direct era. And I actually think a journalism background is kind of amazing for that and might be much more fulfilling to someone who's a former journalist than, pitching their former peers on stories. And so so I think like finding a company that really values the sort of editorial piece, especially if you have, you come with an audience or you know how to build audiences, you have a leg up over comms people with more traditional backgrounds who tend to not have a public presence, and maybe, you know, are reliant on other people to sort of intermediaries to tell stories and are less adept at telling them themselves. So I actually think it's a great time to make this kind of career change.
Yeah, I think also just, I mean, I've been a few years removed from the journalism world, but I have a lot of friends who are also leaving journalism. Obviously, it's well documented that there's a lot of layoffs going on in traditional media. Many years ago, it was that weird transition where you all of a sudden are pitching your peers about these stories. So actually, it's a really interesting point that you made that like now it's really focused on narrative of like how companies tell their stories and going direct and a lot more effective.
Yeah, and journalists know how to do that in a way that appeals to a broader audience. Companies can be very
Totally.
insular when they tell their stories, right? They think like this feature set is really cool, and like you have to like go meet your audience where they are, and journalists know exactly how to do that, right? Like why is what this startup doing relevant to people who like aren't on the cap table or aren't working there? And so I think that particular skill set is like in high demand today.
Another question someone asked, how do you manage up? And that is a fun one. I feel like my answer to this is like people often think of managing up as you're managing your direct manager, and that is actually the wrong mindset. The mindset is, how do I make my manager look amazing? And that is like, when you answer that question, you start actually unpacking like what that means. And so, you know, how do you make your manager look amazing? Like you help them with whatever you think that they're trying to do, whether it's managing up or managing a bunch of stakeholders. So it's just like a different framing of the question. Another question.
I'll take it. Where do you get all your news information from?
I thought you were going to take it, Sally.
Oh, so I have to take it? Oh, God.
Well, I thought that's what you were claiming.
Well, I love asking this question to people because it's a good study for me because when I was in media, we would ask these questions all the time, and my view has shifted. So now I get a lot of my news from Twitter, which like kills me inside as a former journalist. I love reading for tech news. I love reading the information. Of course, Tech Meme. Shout out to Gabe. I also actually Abe Burns sends out this headline newsletter that I think a lot of people subscribe to, and he breaks down just like pure like 2-sentence headlines across like multiple sectors, and that's a really easy, quick read. And then a lot of the Substacks. So I like reading Casey Newton's. I like reading Eric Newcomer's. I'm probably
Alex
missing.
Conrad just launched his Upstart, so former Forbes reporter.
Shout out to Alex.
Don't forget to shout out the Great Chat group chat. Like I get so much of my news from our chat, and actually just group chats in general. I feel like it's the most curated news feed for me, just friends sharing relevant things. And Twitter actually feels like a hard place to get news these days. I miss huge things. Maybe the algorithm doesn't care about certain content, or maybe only the most sort of extreme and polarizing stuff makes it into my feed. So like the group chat has become my best source of like, I need to make sure I don't miss anything big. Maybe that's a good way to end. Go group chats.
All right. Well, see you guys next week.
Later.
Thanks for listening to Great Chat. Have questions for us? Make sure to submit them at anothergreatchat.com. See you next week.